What's up everyone, it's Blue here at Blue Bears Games, and for this week's videos, I will be unboxing and then upgrading the Modern Horizons 3 Eldrazi Incursion Commander precon. Before I get to today's video, I want to first take a moment to ask for your help in supporting my channel. The easiest and cheapest ways to show your support are by liking my videos, subscribing to the channel if you haven't yet, sharing any of my content on your socials, and or by watching some of my many other videos that I've created over the years. Additionally, you can support the channel by purchasing Super Thanks, channel memberships, decks that you may have seen on the channel directly from me on the Blue Bears Games Facebook page, and or visiting our sponsor, Arcane Fortress, by using the link that just popped up at the top of your screen and purchasing any of their amazing gaming supplies from them. By using that link specifically, you should receive a 5% discount store-wide. And finally, the last thing you can possibly do to help the channel out is through donations of extra cards that you may have just lying around. Even your bulkiest of bulk will help immensely, so if you'd like to donate to the channel, please message me on the Blue Bears Games Facebook page or email me at bluebearsgames@gmail.com and we can discuss the logistics of how. Anything you can do to help support my small channel is greatly appreciated, and I thank you for it. Now with that out of the way, let's begin. This video will be the unboxing of the precon, where I'll show you everything that comes in the box, including the deck card by card. And then tomorrow's video will be my upgrade guide, where I'll go over some options on what I believe you should take out, and then add back in to help make the deck either more fun to play a little better, or best case scenario, both. This deck's color identity is all 5 colors, sometimes referred to as rainbow, and uses Ulalek Fused Atrocity as the commander. Ulalek has a unique casting cost, where it costs 5 mana to cast, but each pip in its casting cost is either one of the 5 colors or 1 colorless mana. For that 5 mana, you get a 2/5 legendary Eldrazi with Devoid, meaning it has no color, and another ability that says whenever you cast an Eldrazi spell, you may pay 2 colorless mana. If you do, copy all spells that you control, then copy all other activated abilities and triggered abilities you control. You may choose new targets for the copies, and in parentheses it says mana abilities can't be copied. This ability is a little tough to take full advantage of, but at the very least it allows you to copy any Eldrazi spell that you cast for 2 colorless mana. That equates to basically getting 2 copies of one of those badass Eldrazi creatures that you've cast for the low cost of just 2 extra colorless mana. To fully understand how to utilize this ability beyond just paying the extra 2 when you cast an Eldrazi spell to get an extra token of the one that you just cast, I had to go on Arena, make a deck that had different scenarios for how to use it, and then play myself on a second account so that I could see what worked. What I found out was that this ability can only be utilized fully when you either cast an instant that's an Eldrazi Kindred spell, or come up with a way to cast Eldrazi creatures as if though they had flash. Each of these options are possible, and the results were kinda ridiculous, but the hoops I had to jump through to make this work were a bit much. I'm not sure that I personally want to build a deck that is solely based around this ability, so I'm okay with it just letting me double my Eldrazi spells for 2 mana. My biggest concern overall, however, is in the fact that this is a 5-color deck, yet Eldrazi are very particular in that they prefer using colorless mana specifically. My fear is that just like the creative energy precon, we may run into 2 ideas clashing with each other. Hopefully I'm wrong, but Wizards has been known to try and jam too much into a commander precon before. The only way to find out for sure is to just rip this bad boy open and show you what's in the box. So here is what the outside of the box looks like. It says Eldrazi Incursion, Start Small, Eldrazi Smash. That's what the whole premise of this is. And as you can see, it's all 5 colors plus a 6th, I guess, color you could say, which is colorless. On the back should be Ulalek, but it's very small and I can't see it, so that's why I show you that in the beginning. This is supposed to be the best of the Modern Horizons 3 Commander decks, but, you know, I'm going to reserve that by actually opening it up, taking a look inside, and showing you everything, and then I'll make a decision from there. So as always, when we open them up, we have a couple of goodies. We have the deck, we have an insert, we have this, which has these things on them that I just don't like anymore. They used to be full-size ones, and they were great for dividers. They don't give us that anymore, and that's kind of a shame. The truth of the matter is, I'd rather have just one here that may be, like, long-wise, so it doesn't mess with the picture, instead of these 2 small crappy ones, but we get what we get, right? Some +1/+1 counters and some Planeswalker symbol counters. Don't know what to do with the Planeswalker symbol ones except for use them as just generic counters. I mean, we've got, you know, experience counters and such that we may be able to use them with, but who knows. Then we got the box. We've got the generic life wheel. So it goes to 1 through 20 on one side, 21 through 40 on the other. I use them now instead of for life. I use them to keep track of commander damage. And if something gets a lot of counters on it, I just use that instead. Here's the box. There's all 5 colors plus the colorless mana symbol. And then we've got the Planeswalker symbols on both sides, and then Ulalek on the back. Here's the insert that I have realized can be a poster if you just fold this one side in. It has Ulalek and a little bit about him on the front side. And then, of course, on the back, another picture of Ulalek, and then a little bit about playing the deck and extra commander rules. I've said it a couple times, but for those of you who don't watch all of my videos, I use these as dividers in my storage boxes as well. Then, of course, we've got the deck itself, which we'll go over in a minute. And we have a Collector's Booster Sample Pack, which I was kind of hoping that they would be better for all 4, but they're not. So let me zoom, and we'll get started on looking at the Booster Pack first. Alright, here we go. First one is Aether Revolt, foil extended art, and a Jolted Awake retro foil, which is not very exciting because I even took that out of the deck that it came in. So that's pretty bad. Basically, we rolled bad on all the Collector's Booster Sample Packs. That's an extra piece to the puzzle. It's not the actual reason why we're here, though. We're here for this deck. Supposedly, it's the best of all of them, so why don't we just get started on that? Now, I already showed you what Ulalek does. Here is what it looks like from the box itself. It's a foil edition, nice and shiny. And then the secondary commander, I got this in my first deck that I opened, the Collector's Booster Sample Pack. It was an Azlask. This is a 3-mana, 2/2 Eldrazi. Whenever it or another colorless creature you control dies, you get an experience counter. And then the other ability is for all 5 colors, meaning that you can do it as many times as you can pay the cost. It says creatures that you control get +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of experience counters that you have, and then Scions and Spawns that you control gain Indestructible and Annihilator 1 until end of turn, which is kind of cool. The 2 commanders don't really play well with each other. They don't do much to help each other out. So this one's going to be you can choose to use either or. So I feel like this deck's going to be split between the 2 ideas. So let's take a look at that. We start off with a Snapping Voidcraw. It is 3 to cast for a 1/3 Eldrazi turtle. It's devoid, and devoid means that it just doesn't have color, even though it has color in its mana cost. However, commander identity-wise, it is a blue-green card. It just, for purposes of having like colorless creature spells or colorless spells cast, it is devoid for those. It taps to add 2 colorless, and you can pay 3 and a colorless, tap it, and draw a card. Herald's Horn, that is a great reprint, especially in any typal deck. Everflowing Chalice, good ramp, actually. This is a good mana rock. It's 0 to cast and does nothing if you cast it for 0, but it has a multi-kicker of 2. So for every 2 you put into it when you cast it, you get a counter on it, and then it taps to add a colorless mana for each counter on it. So at very least, it could be a 2 to cast mana rock that taps to add 1 colorless. Not bad. Glaring Flesh Raker. This is actually one of the cards that I really like from this set. It is a 1 colorless and 2 generic mana to cast 2/2 Eldrazi Drone that says whenever you cast a colorless spell, which is why Devoid matters in this deck, you create a 0/1 colorless Eldrazi Spawn creature token that has the ability that you can sacrifice this creature to add 1 colorless mana. And then the really good part of this card is that it says whenever another colorless creature enters the battlefield under your control, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. So this could actually be like a win con in itself if you get enough creatures that are colorless entering the battlefield. Then we have Wastscape Battlemage, a 1 colorless and 1 generic mana 2/2 Eldrazi Wizard that has a kicker cost of a green and or 1 generic and a blue. It says whenever you cast this spell, if it was kicked using the green portion of the kicker, you exile target artifact or enchantment that an opponent controls. It also has when you cast a spell and you kicked it for the 1 blue and 1 of any, you return target creature an opponent controls to its owner's hand. Crib Swap, that is a reprint. Titan's Vanguard. This is a 5 to cast 5/5 just Eldrazi with Devoid. It also has Trample, and it says whenever you cast this spell, and whenever Titan's Vanguard attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on each colorless creature that you control. Not bad. Talisman of Resilience. This is a black-green mana rock. Hedron Archive, another mana rock. Spawning Bed. This is a reprint. That's a good one for this deck. Ulamog's Nullifier, another reprint. Twisted Landscape. This was a new type of land in Modern Horizons 3. So it enters the battlefield untapped and can tap to add a colorless mana. It also has an ability that says you can tap it and sack it to search your library for a basic swamp, mountain, or forest card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle, but it also cycles for the 3 colors that are here. So this one cycles for a black, a red, and a green, and there is a wedge cycle of 5 that do that. Tranquil Landscape. So this is another one of those I just read off to you. Only this one searches for a forest, a plains, or an island, and it cycles for the 3 colors of the lands that I just told you. Tectonic Edge. I noticed that they followed my theory that you always put a land that can be a non-basic land destruction in Commander decks. I'd like to see that they actually followed that. Reliquary Tower. It's a nice reprint. Soul Ring. Artisan of Kozilek, so a couple of reprints in a row. Opal Palace. Ulamog's Dreadsire. This is a 10-mana, 10/10 Eldrazi that has Vigilance, has Ward that they have to sacrifice a permanent with a mana value of 1 or greater, and it can tap to create a 10/10 colorless Eldrazi creature token. So it's kind of like the brother, if you will, to the twins. That's a 10 to cast 10/10 that puts a 10/10 in play. Only this one does it every turn that you can tap it. Benthic Anomaly, a 7 to cast 7/8 Eldrazi Serpent. This has the Void, so it has no color. And it says, when you cast this spell, for each opponent, choose a creature that player controls. Create a token that's a copy of one of those creatures, except its power is equal to the total power of those creatures. Its toughness is equal to the total toughness of those creatures. And it's a colorless Eldrazi creature. Eldritch Community. This is a 1 colorless Kindred instant Eldrazi. So it's an Eldrazi spell instead of an actual creature. It does trigger things I say when you cast an Eldrazi, by the way. And it says, target creature you control gains protection from each color until end of turn. And then you can overload it for a colorless and 4 generic mana. So that means that each creature you control can gain protection from each color until end of turn. Selective Obliteration. This is 2 colorless and 3. For sorcery that says each player chooses a color, then exile each permanent unless it's colorless or the chosen color its controller chose. Angelic Aberration. This is a 6 to cast 4/4 Eldrazi Angel. This has the Void, Flying, and Vigilance. So basically it's a Serra Angel that's an Eldrazi, and it's 6 to cast instead of 5. And then it says, when it enters the battlefield, sacrifice any number of creatures, each with base power or toughness of 1 or less, and create that many 4/4 Eldrazi Angel colorless creature tokens with Flying and Vigilance. Bismuth Mindrender. This is a 4 to cast 4/3 Eldrazi with the Void and Menace. And then the final ability says that whenever it deals combat damage to a player, that player exiles cards from the top of their library until they exile a non-land card. You may cast that card by paying life equal to its mana value rather than paying its mana cost. Hideous Taskmaster. This is a 7 to cast 7/2 Eldrazi with the Void, and an ability that says whenever you cast this spell, for each opponent, gain control of up to 1 target creature that player controls until end of turn. Untap those creatures, and they gain Trample, Haste, and Annihilator 1 until end of turn. It also has Trample, Haste, and Annihilator 1. Twins of Discord. This is a 7 to cast Eldrazi that is an 8/6 with an ability that says whenever you attack, choose odd or even. Creatures with a mana value of the chosen quality can't block this turn. And then each other colorless creature you control has Bloodthirst 2. Interesting. Mutated Cultist. This is a 3 to cast 1/3 Eldrazi Horror with the Void and Death Touch. And then an ability that says when you cast this spell, remove all counters from up to 1 target permanent or opponent. The next spell that you cast this turn costs 1 less to cast for each counter that was removed this way. Eldrazi Confluence. This is a 4 to cast instant that costs 2 colorless and 2 generic. And you can choose 3, and you may choose the same mode more than once. And the modes are, target creature gets +3/-3 until end of turn. Exile target non-land permanent. Then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. And create a 1/1 colorless Eldrazi Scion creature token with sacrifice this creature and add a colorless. Spawnbed Protector. This is a 7-cast 6/8 Eldrazi that says at the beginning of your end step, return up to 1 target Eldrazi creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Create 2 1/1 colorless Eldrazi Scion creature tokens with sacrifice this creature, add a colorless. Chittering Dispatcher is a 3-cast 2/3 Eldrazi drone with the Void Myriad, and whenever it leaves the battlefield, you create a 0/1 Eldrazi spawn creature token with the ability that you can sacrifice it to add a colorless mana. Inversion Behemoth. This is a 4-cast 2/9 Eldrazi that says at the beginning of combat on your turn, switch the power and toughness of each of any number of target creatures until end of turn. Ugin the Ineffable. This is a reprint. Eldrazi Conscription. This is a reprint. Cascading Cataracts. This is a reprint, but this is an important one for a 5-color deck. It's indestructible. It taps to add a colorless, or you can pay 5 and tap it to add 5 mana in any combination of colors. That's kind of important for a deck that needs all 5 colors. Eldrazi Monument. Good reprint. That's a great reprint, actually. Sire of Stagnation. Good reprint. Shrine of the Forsaken Gods. I have this in my Eldrazi deck. Ugin's Insight. This is a reprint. Drowner of Hope. Another reprint. Return of the Wildspeaker. Reprint. Tendo Icebridge. That's a reprint. Battlefield Forge. Land War Wastes. Brushland. Underground River. Oblivion Cellar. Adakar Wastes. Karpluzan Forest. Yavimaya Coast. Sulphurous Springs. Caves of Koilos. And Shivan Reef. All those were reprints. Second half of the deck, this should go a little faster. Imprisoned in the Moon. Again, another reprint. Temple of Malady. Boo. Temple of Silence. Boo. Morophon, the Boundless. Actually, that's a pretty good reprint. At one point in time, this was the only real way you could do a 5-color Eldrazi deck, so that's pretty cool. Good little throwback to that. Kozilek's Return. Worldbreaker. These are all reprints. Thrones of Oran Reef. Sifter of Skulls. Soulbringer. Corrupted Crossroads. Deep Fathom Skulker. Vile Redeemer. Eldrazi Displacer. I like this in a lot of decks that aren't even Eldrazi. It's a good combo piece. Mystic Forge. All is Dust. Good reprint for an Eldrazi deck. Rishkar's Expertise. Awakening Zone. Eldrazi Temple. I'm kind of shocked that's in here. I didn't think they were going to do that. Elder Deep Fiend. Bonder's Enclave for some card draw. Exotic Orchard. Actually, in this deck, the one time I won't remove Exotic Orchard from a deck is when it's a 5-color deck, because then no matter what, you'll get something out of it. That's actually a pretty good inclusion for once. Forsaken Monument. Dreamstone Hedron. Arcane Signet, which is weird to say that you need that for an Eldrazi deck, because they're usually colorless. Tomb of the Spirit Dragon. Secluded Courtyard. Idol of Oblivion. A Waste. I wonder how many of them are in here. Just the one. Weird. Okay. Talisman of Curiosity. Talisman of Impulse. Warping Whale. Talisman of Dominance. Command Tower. Ash Barrens. Ancient Stirrings. That usually is a staple in Eldrazi decks. Ulamog's Crusher. Garruk's Uprising. Suffer the Past. Skittering Invasion. Path of Ancestry. Unclaimed Territory. A plains, an island, a mountain, a swamp, a forest. And that's all the basics, so you get one of each. Then we get the thick Ulalek, which is kind of cool. If they've stopped doing that, that's kind of a shame, but, you know, it is what it is to save money. And then the tokens. So we've got Eldrazi. Eldrazi, copy, copy, copy. Eldrazi Spawn. Got a bunch of them. And then the other side, Eldrazi Scion, and I bet you it's a bunch of them. A Shapeshifter token, an Eldrazi Angel token, a couple of them, and a Spirit token, or 2. And that, my friends, is what comes in the Modern Horizons 3 Eldrazi Incursion Commander Precon. The good news is that the mana base for this deck is probably the best Wizards has done for a 5-color deck to date. That may have something to do with the fact that it needs both colorless and colored mana specifically, and the Pain lands paired with the lands that care about creature types to produce colored mana fill that role very well. The bad news is that the two commanders don't really care about what the other does. Ulalek just wants you to cast Eldrazi spells in hopes that you can double triggers, while Azlask cares about buffing creatures, specifically the Scion and Spawn tokens that you create. This leads to a similar situation that the Creative Energy Precon had, where the deck doesn't quite gel together as well as you'd hope. This means that the choice I have for tomorrow's upgrade guide is to choose between which of the two I'd rather helm the deck, and then make changes to the rest of the deck accordingly. I'm leaning towards Azlask, honestly, but I'll do some more research and decide from there. If you want to know what I come up with, you'll just have to check back tomorrow to find out. Well, folks, that's all for today's video. Thanks for watching, but if you're looking for more Magic-related content to watch, please browse through my channel and take a look at some of my many other videos. Before you go, though, please smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet, so you can be notified when I release new content, which I do every Friday, sometimes on Saturdays, and now occasionally on Mondays. Have a great day, and I will see you all tomorrow.